The desert outpost smelled of burned metal and old fuel, a place where broken ships limped in and hoped for another day among the stars. Yarrick wiped his hands on a stained rag and leaned against the hull of a rusted freighter, squinting against the glare of two suns. He was a mechanic, nothing more, nothing less, one of the countless human laborers scattered across the edge of explored space. His coveralls were patched in more places than they were whole, and his tools were older than he cared to admit. Yet, when engines sputtered and systems groaned, Captain still came to him because he had a reputation for honesty in a place where most survived by deceit. The day had dragged on with repairs to mining shuttles and cargo haulers, their captains bargaining hard to shave off every credit. Jarrick's stomach grumbled, reminding him of his growing debt at the cantina. He could have cut corners, sold a cheaper part, skipped a safety check, but something inside refused. His father had once told him, "If a man can only give truth, then he is richer than kings." That promise to himself was the only thing Yarrick had never let rust. As the suns dipped low, a ship unlike any he had seen descended in silence, its metallic skin shimmering like liquid silver. It landed with precise grace, displacing dust in neat spirals, as if even the air bent to its will. Jarrick's brow furrowed. This was no cargo hauler, no patched-up freighter. The vessel bore an elegance that screamed of technology far beyond the frontier. Its curves seemed alive, pulsing faintly with soft azure veins of light. For a moment, he felt small, like a child staring up at the stars for the first time. The hatch opened with a sound more like a whisper than a hiss. From the shadows emerged a tall figure clad in a sleek bodysuit that glowed faintly along its seams. Her skin was green, smooth as polished stone, and her eyes held an otherworldly luminescence, neither hostile nor warm, but assessing. She stepped down with measured poise, scanning the outpost as if every grain of sand belonged to her study. The handful of workers loitering nearby fell silent. Some muttered slurs under their breath about xeno-aristocrats, but none dared approach. She walked directly toward Yarrick, as though she had known him before the landing. When she spoke, her voice was melodic, carrying an authority wrapped in velvet. "My vessel requires repair. The engine's core is unstable. Can you mend it?" Yarrick swallowed, acutely aware of the ship behind her and the weight of those luminous eyes. "I can try," he answered, forcing his voice steady. "But I'll need to see the damage up close. Advanced drives aren't common here." Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but something close. "Then you'll be the first among your kind to touch one." With a gesture, the ship's panels folded open, revealing a nest of humming machinery. At its heart pulsed a rotating core of light, bright and fragile as a captured star. Yarrick stepped closer, the glow painting his face in blue. His hands itched to work, but he felt the stares of the others on his back. The outpost had seen plenty of odd ships, but this was different. Whoever this woman was, she carried wealth and danger both. One wrong word, one wrong move, and the mechanic might vanish into the desert without trace. Yet, as he looked at the core's flickering instability, instinct took over. A drive like that could tear itself apart if neglected. He reached for his tools, speaking almost to himself. "The flux stabilizers are misaligned. Someone tried to push this engine harder than it was meant to go." The alien woman tilted her head, studying him with interest. "And what would you do?" "I'd fix it properly," he replied without hesitation. "Not patch it. Not cheat it. If it fails mid-flight, no bribe will buy back your life." For the first time, she truly smiled, though it was fleeting, as if joy was something she had forgotten long ago. She folded her arms and leaned lightly against the ship, watching him work. "Most would offer a temporary repair. It would cost less effort, and I would hardly know the difference." Yarrick tightened a bolt, his movements deliberate. "Maybe you wouldn't, but I would. And that's enough." Hours passed, the mechanic buried in a world of wires and circuits, the alien's presence always at the edge of his vision. She asked little, but her silence was not empty. It pressed, measured, weighed. When he paused to wipe sweat from his brow, He noticed how intently she studied his every action, as though each turn of his wrench told her more than words could. By the time the twin moons rose above the jagged cliffs, Yerrick had stabilized the core, the light within it no longer flickering but spinning with steady brilliance. He stepped back, exhausted but satisfied. "She'll fly again," he said, patting the hull like an old friend. The woman regarded him, her gaze unreadable. "You speak of machines as if they are alive." Yerrick shrugged. "When you've spent your life keeping them alive, it feels that way." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of the repaired drive. Finally, she asked, "And what do you ask as payment for honesty?" The question struck him as odd, but he answered simply, "Enough to cover the work. Nothing more." Her expression shifted again, this time softer, though still veiled in mystery. She studied him like a puzzle piece sliding into place. Then, without further word, she turned toward her ship, leaving him with the faintest feeling that something far larger than an engine had just been set in motion. Yerrick exhaled, unaware that the night sky above seemed to burn brighter, as if the stars themselves waited to see what would follow. Yerrick rose before the suns, his body aching from the long night's labor, yet his mind restless with thoughts of the green-skinned stranger. The memory of her eyes lingered like an afterimage, watching, measuring, probing deeper than words allowed. He had repaired ships all his life, but never had a client left him feeling so unsettled. He told himself she was just another traveler, albeit from a wealthier and stranger world, but something inside whispered otherwise. When he returned to the vessel, she was already there, standing beside the hull as though she had not moved all night. The glow of the repaired engine bathed her in shifting light, highlighting the fine ridges along her temples, marks that might have been ornamental or biological. She regarded him with the same calm intensity, and when she finally spoke, her voice cut through the morning stillness. "You worked with care, not haste. Few in this outpost would refuse shortcuts." "Why?" Yerrick set his toolbox down, feeling the weight of her gaze. "Because shortcuts kill people. I've seen too many pilots carried out of wreckage because someone wanted to save time or coin." He hesitated, then added, "Life is fragile enough without helping death along." She tilted her head, as though tasting the honesty in his words. "You speak as if life is sacred, yet I sense you have lost much." His jaw tightened. She could not know of his brother, the boy who had once dreamed of becoming a pilot, but had perished when a corrupt mechanic cut corners on a shuttle engine. Yerrick pushed the memory aside, unwilling to open that wound before a stranger. "Loss doesn't make life less sacred," he said instead. "It makes it more." For a time, she was silent, her expression unreadable. Then, with deliberate calm, she asked, "And if you were offered wealth to look away from truth, what would you choose?" Yerrick gave a humorless laugh. "If I wanted wealth, I wouldn't be here, fixing ships on the edge of nowhere. Money comes and goes. What you build with your hands and your conscience, those last." Her eyes glimmered faintly, as if something within her approved, though her voice betrayed nothing. "Interesting. Among my kind, many would call that weakness. But perhaps strength lies where others see only poverty." Before he could answer, alarms shattered the morning quiet. From the cliffs beyond the outpost, 3 raider skiffs descended, their engines screaming. Dust billowed as they landed, and armed figures leapt to the ground. The locals scattered, some ducking into storage bays, others reaching for weapons they could barely afford. Raiders were common along the frontier, preying on outposts too remote for patrols to protect. Jarek's instincts flared. He glanced at the alien woman, who remained unnervingly composed, her posture regal even as danger closed in. "You should hide," he urged. "They'll strip your ship apart and kill anyone in their way." Her luminous eyes narrowed, but she did not move. Instead, she said, "And what will you do, mechanic? You hold no weapon. You are no soldier." "I know engines," Yerrick replied, gripping a heavy wrench from his kit. "Engines and machines, and sometimes that's enough." The raiders approached, their leader barking orders to seize the silver vessel. One lunged for the open engine bay, but Yarrick swung his wrench hard, catching the man across the shoulder. The raider stumbled, cursing, and Yarrick planted himself between them and the glowing core he had just repaired. Fear clawed at his chest, but he stood firm. The alien woman moved then, not with panic, but with terrifying grace. A gesture of her hand released a pulse of energy that flung two raiders backward, their weapons clattering to the dust. The others froze, stunned by the display. Her voice, low and commanding, rang out like a blade across stone. "Touch this ship again, and your lives will end before your breath does." The raiders hesitated, torn between greed and survival. Jarrek's heart thundered. He had suspected she was more than she appeared, but witnessing her power firsthand stirred awe and unease alike. When the raiders finally retreated, snarling threats but unwilling to test her again, silence returned to the outpost. Yarrick exhaled slowly, lowering his wrench. He turned to her, searching for words. "You could have destroyed them outright. Why let them leave?" Her expression softened, just slightly. "Fear lingers longer than ashes. They will spread the tale, and others will think twice before testing me." He studied her, caught between gratitude and suspicion. "You're not just some traveler, are you?" She met his gaze, and for a moment the mask of calm slipped, revealing a weight carried in silence.
"No."
"But neither am I ready to tell you what I am." She looked at him more intently, her tone edged with something personal now. "What matters is how you chose to act. You faced danger, without promise of reward."
"Why?"
Jarrek's grip tightened on the wrench before he set it down. "Because it was right. Because I couldn't stand aside while they tore apart what I worked to keep alive." He hesitated, then added, "And because you trusted me with your ship. That's not something I take lightly." Her eyes softened in a way that unsettled him more than her display of power. "Trust," she repeated quietly, as though testing the weight of the word. "It is rarer than power, even in the highest courts." The suns had climbed higher, casting long shadows across the barren ground. The raiders were gone, but the unease they left remained. Yarrick wiped his hands, suddenly aware of how little he understood the woman standing before him. Yet he also felt the bond forming, fragile but undeniable, forged in fire and honesty. When she finally spoke again, her words carried the finality of a door closing, or perhaps opening. "You have shown me more than I expected, human. But know this, the choice you made today binds you to paths you cannot yet see." Yarrick frowned, unsettled by her tone. "What paths?" She turned toward the vessel, the silver hull gleaming like a secret under the suns. "That is for tomorrow to decide." He watched her ascend the ramp, the hum of the ship filling the air once more. His heart pounded with questions he could not voice. All he knew was that the world had shifted, and the mechanic who had lived in obscurity had just stepped into a story far larger than his own. The day after the raid dawned still and strange, the air heavy with the weight of things unsaid. Yarrick had expected the alien woman to vanish before morning, her ship lifting silently into the heavens as so many others had. Instead, she remained, her vessel gleaming on the sands like a fallen star. He found her standing alone by the cliffs, watching the twin suns rise. She did not turn when he approached, though she must have known he was there. "You never told me your name," Yarrick said quietly, stopping a respectful distance away. Her gaze lingered on the horizon. "Names are dangerous things. They bind and reveal. To give one freely is to offer a piece of the self." Finally, she looked at him, her luminous eyes catching the morning light. "And yet you gave me yours without hesitation." "I'm not much of a mystery," he said with a dry laugh. "A poor mechanic with debts and scars. My name isn't worth hiding." "That is where you are wrong," she replied, her voice solemn. "It is in the unhidden soul that true power dwells." Before Yarrick could answer, the silence of the outpost broke. A convoy of sleek black ships descended from the skies, their hulls marked with sigils unfamiliar to him but which the alien woman recognized instantly. She straightened, her entire bearing shifting in a breath. Guards in ceremonial armor disembarked, forming precise ranks, their heads bowed low. At their center strode a figure who fell to one knee the moment he reached her. His voice rang with reverence. "Your radiance, the Empress has found." Yerrick froze, the words striking like thunder. He looked from the kneeling guards to the woman beside him, his heart pounding. "Empress?" he whispered, disbelief thick in his voice. She did not deny it. Her shoulders lifted, as though shrugging off the cloak of anonymity she had worn. In that instant, her presence seemed to grow, filling the air with an undeniable gravity. Where before she had been a mysterious traveler, now she stood revealed as something vast and unreachable. "I am Serenia," she said softly, her voice both burdened and unyielding. "Empress of the Lithari Dominion." The guards remained bowed, waiting for her command. Jarrek's mouth went dry, his thoughts tumbling over themselves. He remembered her calm under attack, her strange questions about honesty and choice. All along, she had been measuring him, not as a mechanic, but as something else entirely. He felt suddenly small, a speck standing before a storm. She turned to him, and though her bearing was regal, her eyes held something personal, something fragile. "You see me now for what I am. Does it change the truth of who you are?" Yerrick searched her face, struggling to find words. "It explains why you looked at me like you were weighing the galaxy. But I'm still me, a mechanic who patched your ship." He hesitated, then added, "And you're still the one who asked me about honesty." A faint smile ghosted across her lips. "And you answered without flinching. That is why I sought you. Not because you could repair what others could not, but because you revealed no hunger for power when temptation was set before you." Confusion warred with unease in Jarrek's chest. "You came here looking for me?" "Not you alone," she said, "but one like you. In a court of liars, I needed to know if truth could still be found in the unlikeliest of places. I disguised myself, hid among strangers, and waited. And in you, I found what I sought." The guards stirred, awaiting her decree. She raised a hand, silencing them, her gaze never leaving Yerrick. "I offer you a choice. You can remain here, a mechanic bound to dust and solitude. Or you can come with me, as my confidant, perhaps more. The court will resist you. The path will be perilous, but your honesty could reshape worlds." Jarrek's breath caught. The offer was staggering, absurd. A life of obscurity on one hand, and on the other, the unthinkable, to stand beside an empress in a realm of power and intrigue. He thought of his tools, of the workbench cluttered with scrap and half-finished projects. He thought of the honesty that had defined him, the vow never to betray the trust placed in his hands. Could that vow survive in the glittering jaws of an empire? "I'm no courtier," he said hoarsely. "I wouldn't know their games. I fix engines, not thrones." Serenia's eyes softened. "That is why you're needed. Thrones can be repaired, but seldom by those who built them." The suns climbed higher, burning away the shadows, yet Yerrick felt caught between two worlds, the one he knew, small but steady, and the one before him, vast and uncertain. He met her gaze, and for the first time, he saw not just the Empress, but the woman who had stood quietly beside him as he worked, who had asked him what price he put on truth. "I don't know if I can be what you expect," he admitted. She stepped closer, her presence both regal and human. "I do not expect perfection. I only seek honesty. And you have already proven you cannot be anything else." Around them, the guards waited, the convoy gleamed, and the outpost held its breath. Yerrick felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders, yet beneath it flickered something stubbornly his own, the certainty that whatever path he chose, it would be chosen honestly. He looked once more at the sky, at the stars scattered like possibilities waiting to be seized, and knew his life would never again be small. Whether he stepped aboard her ship or remained in the dust, the universe had already changed. The choice lingered between them, unspoken but alive, promising that the story was far from over.